Hi, everyone, and welcome to the November 2023 5 Miles from Anywhere meeting. As most of you know, because we have a lot of regulars on today, we are an online international Scion society, and we have members from across the globe. And today, we're honored to have as a guest Craig Copland, who is one of the most prolific Sherlock Holmes authors today. So I am going to start the slideshow here. I just saw Andy. Andy's got his mask on in honor of the holiday here. Guy Fawkes Day, right? Is that how it's pronounced? All right. All right, everyone. So as usual, we're going to start with announcements. After announcements, we will then hear the talk from Craig on adapting Canonical Sherlock Holmes to the current mystery thriller suspense market. Should be a great talk. And then we'll have time for a question and answer session at the end. Okay. All right, so for announcements, I just have a couple, not too many. There's a big one I'm sure everybody already knows, but we'll get to that at the end here. So first of all, the Nancy Springer Creative Writing Contest is going on right now. It's open to students between 9th and 12th grade that have an interest in Sherlock Holmes. If you know of a student, please spread the word because it'd be great. And I actually think that's supposed to be 7th to 12th grade. My apologies on the typo there. It's 7th to 12th grade. There's two categories, 7th to 9th grade and then 10th to 12th grade. Stories must be emailed and received by the Beacon Society by December 15th to be eligible for prizes. And the prizes are really, really great. Students could win $100, $200, or up to $500 as a reward and a lovely plaque with their name on it. So if you know of any students, or please spread the word about this, because we're really hoping it's the first year we've done it. We want to get a really good amount of entries and get to read some awesome student-written pastiche. Another announcement that it's now time to nominate your favorite recent works of Doylean fiction, poetry, performing art, visual art, and scholarship for the annual Doylean Honors Awards from the Arthur Conan Doyle Society. Okay, the deadline for this, for all entries in all categories, is November 15th, 2023. See the ACD Society website for details. The awards are given out during the BSI weekend at the Mysterious Bookshop in New York City. And that's on the Thursday morning of the BSI weekend. So if anyone gets a chance to go, it's a really fun time. And just, we also have the race. There's a little wind-up horse race that is the Wessex Cup we run, which is just a lot of fun. So if anybody, even if you're not nominating and you're at BSI weekend, please come. It's a lot of fun. We pack the Mysterious Bookshop and just have a Sherlockian blast. And of course, the last announcement, which hopefully everybody already knows, BSI Weekend 2024 is coming up. Events are from January 10th to Sunday. That's a Wednesday. That's where we'll do the Ash Wednesday informal dinner to Sunday, January 14th, which ends with the brunch. The official BSI events will be open to the public, include the BSI Distinguished Speaker Lecture, the Merchant's Room, and the BSI Luncheon Reception. Public reservations for hotel lodgings and BSI events will open via their website beginning Wednesday, November 22nd. Okay, so for Americans, right before the day before Thanksgiving. Okay, payment is only via postal mail. The deadline will be December 4th, so plan to act quickly. And there's just, I mean, I can't speak highly enough of how much fun BSI weekend is. Lots of cool events. I'm actually going to my first SPOD dinner this year, so that should be a lot of fun. And just, it's a wonderful time. I'm going to just stop sharing just for a second and just ask if anybody has any other announcements. Please unmute and you can just let us know. Shayna.
Hi. In 2 weeks, on the 18th, is the Ash Fall Luncheon. I will put a link to the upcoming events page for Ash in the chat. You can also make your reservation for the Sunday brunch that Brian just mentioned during the BSI weekend, because they do that as well.
Excellent. Thank you. I've always wanted to make it out to New York for one of those, but haven't had a chance to yet. But thank you, Shayna. Any other announcements? Ray.
I just want to let folks know, anybody that's in this part of the country, the Norwegian Explorers in Minnesota are having their annual dinner on Thursday, December 7th, I believe it is. So there's information at the Norwegian Explorers website. If you're around, if you're a member, we'd love to have you join us for the annual dinner.
Thank you very much, Ray. Right. Anything else? Any others? Just unmute and call it out if you do. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to share my screen one more time here. And tell you a little bit about our speaker for today. So Craig Stephen Copland, if you have not read his work, he's done just an amazing job. He discovered Sherlock Holmes sometime in the early 1960s when he pinched his older brother's copy, as he claims, of the immortal stories and was forever afterward thoroughly hooked. He is very grateful to his high school English teachers in Toronto who inculcated in him a love of literature and writing, and even inspired him to be an English major at the University of Toronto. There he was blessed to sit at the feet of both Northrop Frye and Marshall McLuhan, and other great literary professors who led him to believe that he was called to be a high school English teacher. A few years back, he took a step in the direction of Sherlockian studies and joined the Sherlock Holmes Society of Canada, also known as the Toronto Bootmakers. In May of 2014, this esteemed group of scholars announced a contest for the writing of a new Sherlock Holmes mystery. Although he had never tried his hand at fiction before, Craig entered and was pleasantly surprised to be selected as one of the winners. Having enjoyed the experience, he decided to write more of the same and has now completed his mission of writing a new Sherlock Holmes mystery that is related to and inspired by each of the 60 stories in the original canon. I'm going to stop sharing so we can give a warm virtual round of applause to Mr. Copland. And I'll be running his slideshow, and then after his talk, we'll have, as I said, some time for a question and answer session. So let me just share his slideshow now. And all right, Craig, you are on.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I hope you can all hear me clearly. If you can't, say something, do something, and we'll try to get it fixed. Very honored to be with you and delighted to share what I've learned along this strange journey. I'm going to do a little bit more introduction of myself and how I ended up doing what I've done for the last decade. I was born in 1950. I am a baby boomer, born into one of the most privileged, luckiest, fortunate demographics on earth. I was born into a wealthy, loving, stable family in the suburbs of Toronto. I went to good schools. Being a Canadian, I had to ski and skate and learn French. And at summer camp, I learned to paddle and sail and swim. And off to university, where my first degree was in English. I did a bunch of degrees after that. But as Derek's already mentioned, I was privileged to study under Northrop Frye, Marshall McLuhan, a lot of other fine professors, and I had to read all the great books, the epics, the poets, the novels, the dramas. And the only thing which was very odd about my upbringing was that my family was very involved in a fundamentalist, conservative evangelical sect called the Plymouth Brethren. These are a wonderful group of hardworking, honest, God-fearing people that lived very puritanical lives. They didn't swear, they didn't smoke, they didn't drink, they didn't dance, they didn't go to movies unless it was Walt Disney. I'm incredibly thankful for that upbringing because one of the things which happened was we had to read the Bible through from cover to cover several times, memorize countless chapters and memory verses, attend church 5 or 6 times a week. It's been several decades since I've darkened the door of a church except to be a tourist at a cathedral, but it certainly has informed a lot of my writing and what I do, and the themes that I do and all the rest of it. Now, Derek mentioned how I got into Sherlock, but after I retired, I had to do something. And the main motivation, I have to admit personally, was fear. And my fear came from watching what happened to my father. He's an extremely successful, competent gentleman who ended his career as the vice president of Sears. And after he retired, he did virtually nothing. His mind, his body went down. And at age in mid 70s, he slipped into fairly serious dementia. He died of a heart attack at age 79. I was already 65. I decided that's not what I want to happen to me. So I exercised, I ate properly. We traveled a lot, lived in different parts of the world. And I started writing in order to keep learning and keep my mind active. And that resulted in writing Sherlock Holmes. The first story I wrote was as a submission to the bootmakers. That actually started out because Sherlock Holmes started, of course, as a study in the Scarlet. So I just thought around and thought, okay, what Scarlets do I know? I know the Scarlet Pimpernel, but that was French Revolution. That was too early. So what about Scarlet O'Hara? That seemed like fun. I could mash up together Gone with the Wind with Sherlock Holmes. I did it, and I self-published it, and people started buying it to my incredible surprise. And this introduced me to the whole world of Sherlockian readers and so on. So now move on to slide number 2, if you would please, Derek. All right. What I learned very quickly about readers of Sherlock Holmes pastiches. Now I'm tending to use the word now within the Sherlock community. We've used the word pastiche. In the marketing community of books and publishing, is now referred to as fan fiction. But Sherlockian readers are enthusiastic. They're wonderfully responsive. They're very knowledgeable about the canon. I dare not make mistakes. They're repeat customers. They're encouraging and just wonderful, all-around fabulous people. But there are not that many of us. Of the enormous number of people who now buy books off of Amazon, and the number 1 category, of course, is contemporary romance, but number 2 is mystery thriller suspense. And there are millions upon millions of those people, but they are not buying Sherlock Holmes fan fiction. So the challenge, now slide number 3, please. How do you, okay, slide number 3, please. There we go. How in the world do we break out beyond the traditional group of us, the Sherlock Holmes readers of fan fiction, to reach those people who are reading mystery thriller suspense stories? And the first step I did was try to figure out where in the whole world of publishing the canon fits in today's genre marketplace. And slide number 4. All right. We are historical mysteries. We are historical mysteries set in the late Victorian, Edwardian period. They're short stories, 56 short stories plus 4 short novels. Most of these are narrated first person by Dr. Watson. 2 are narrated by Holmes. 2 are written in the third person by an unknown narrator. And then there are parts, the American sections, of course, as you know, of the Study of Scarlet and the Valley of Fear are also narrated in the third person. The closest equivalent in today's genre market are cozy mysteries. Now, we may not like that, but in fact, our Sherlock Holmes stories are very comparable to them in the fact that there's no on-the-page sex, almost no profanity. no blood and gore violence, and unfortunately, there's no book clubs, knitting circles, or cats, but they are generally written as first-person mysteries. Now, slide number 5, please. And the format of the canonical story, and when I'm describing the canon, I'm making an enormous number of generalizations. I realize that, and every one of you can say, well, there's exceptions. I realize that. So for the most part, the typical canonical story begins with Watson doing his introduction. Sometimes Watson and Holmes, Watson may refer to some previous unpublished cases. Then Holmes and Watson chat, and Holmes may do his clever deduction. A client enters. Holmes may do another clever deduction. The client states the case. Then the bulk of the story is Holmes engages and solves the case. And then the last part is the reveal. All right. And I'm describing these issues of the canon, these characteristics of the canon, mainly because these are going to differ from today's mystery thriller suspense genre. So on to slide 6, please. The characters, the canonical characters, the protagonist, Sherlock Holmes, is in the ways we describe people writing as heroes and so on, he is a static hero, which means he really doesn't change all that much. And I'm sure people can come up with some incidents where he has altered his behavior or his character somewhat, but for the most part, Sherlock Holmes we meet in Study in Scarlet is pretty much the same Sherlock Holmes we meet in Shaw's Commode Place. And as the hero, protagonist, he follows in the grand tradition of the knight errant. This is the outsider who comes in, addresses a situation, solves it, makes the world a better place, and leaves. The knight errant, of course, we can go back all the way to Odysseus. It's all through the stories of the knight in chivalry. The great parody of it, of course, was Don Quixote, and we're familiar with it in the modern day with, if you're old enough to remember How the Gun Will Travel, the paladin character, and of course, most recently, Lee Child's Jack Reacher books are very specifically designed as knight-errant heroes. Holmes is not an emotionally engaging hero. He is a calculating machine. We admire him. We respect and are drawn to his pursuit of justice, his compulsion to right wrongs, but we do not engage with him emotionally on the level of deep feeling for his wants, his needs, whatever else, and he's safe. He only gets into trouble once or twice and endured the murderous attack, but for the most part, he is not an endangered hero. And I'm making these comments because these are quite different from today's mystery thriller suspense hero. Watson, of course, is the archetypal assistant. He is the Watson. And he is loyal. He is more emotional in the Holmes, but not very. And he, of course, is not nearly as smart as Holmes. The antagonist, the villain, in all of the stories, the antagonist, other than, of course, Moriarty, who is the only one who is really much of a serious match for Holmes, except for the fact that Holmes knew Baritsu and he didn't. The heroes are not the most demanding or most challenging. There's a variety, several at one time. If you are murderers, several of the stories have no villain at all. So those are the characters. The female characters, slide 7, please. Most of the female characters, young, attractive, they are victims that need help. Some are, have a lot of pluck, they are assertive. But there are very few that are actually villainesses. Isadora Klein is hardly a villainess. Holmes talks about the most winning woman he ever knew who murdered 3 of her children, but we never meet her. And only one, of course, is the match for Holmes who bested him, and that, of course, is Irene Adler. The settings are, for the most part, in Greater London. Holmes does send to a number of areas of England. 3 of the stories, he actually goes to Europe in, well, you know which ones they are. And there are 3 that are sort of set in the USA in the sense of the there's part of the stories there in the study of Scarlet, the American section of Valley of Fear, and then Holmes's time before his last bow, where he says he spent time in Chicago and Buffalo. There are a lot of other references. We know that Holmes traveled during the Great Hiatus, but those places are not actually part of the story. So that's, move on please now to slide 8, and we look at the crimes and punishments. The crimes in the canon are mostly murders, but there's also fraud, impersonation, counterfeiting, theft, treason, forced marriage, kidnapping, blackmail, cheating, espionage. Many of the stories, not many, but a number of the stories, there's no crime at all. In the punishments, and those who know the canon infinitely better than I do, which isn't difficult, I believe it's an actual absolute minority of the stories where the villain is caught, sent off to the gallows or to jail and to punishment. Some of the endings are ironic, where the Dr. Roylott was bitten by his own pet snake. Some places the villain escaped, and several, of course, where Holmes actually delivered a pardon, as he did in the Blue Carbuncle or Abbey Grange. And slide 9, please. Right, the way that the style is written, there's a lot of long paragraphs and long narration, but Conan Doyle, as far as I know, and I can tell, is really in a transition between the Victorian writing style, like Dickens, and a more modern style. He uses a fairly simple vocabulary. It's not difficult. There's a few words which we may need to look up, but more because they are older or not currently in use. He does not, some of his dialogue moves quite quickly and is quite sharp, and is much more in keeping with more modern novels and detective mystery stories. He does not use a lot of voice tags other than said or ask. And now, here is my plea to all of you who are writing Sherlockian pastiche or fan fiction. You can still be canonical without having lines like, "Good heavens, I ejaculated." So that's my plea. You can be very canonical without Watson ejaculating all over the place. The pace varies. There are leisurely introductions. It quickens with the action. Now, when we compare, slide 10, please. When we compare Sherlock stories to current mystery suspense thrillers, this is how I had to adjust. If I wanted to crack the market of people that read mystery thriller suspense, but are not traditional readers of Sherlock pastiches, first of all, short stories are out. People are not buying short stories in any great volume. Now, fine, I'm a Canadian. I did a great fist bump and did yes when Alice Munro was awarded the Nobel Prize. And short stories are wonderfully praised by critics, but they are not purchased by many people. Most mystery thriller suspense books are 60,000 or 80,000 words. Thrillers tend to predominate, and as you're probably quite aware, we differentiate between a mystery and a thriller. Mystery, the crime has occurred, the detective, the hero, the protagonist, the policeman, whatever has to solve it. A thriller, the crime is going to occur, it's going to be disastrous, and our hero has to prevent it. And in virtually all mystery thriller suspense, crimes are now pretty serious. They're murders, they're serial murders, the kidnapping, high treason, major heist, terrorism. There's no more stories really of stealing a single gem, of trying to impersonate somebody to get their somebody's father, lover, whatever, to secure the inheritance. Paragraphs in modern mystery thriller suspense and the dialogue are shorter and snappier. Females have a lot of agency, and there's a lot more humor. Some of it black humor, some whatever in modern mystery thriller suspense. So there is actually Sherlock Holmes. People made a comment that, there's occasional funny exchanges, but the stories are not laugh out loud humorous. So the current mystery, thriller, suspense people, slide 11, please. I took a look at them and said, okay, how do they do it? And you can see up there the ones who are now selling millions and millions of copies of mystery, thriller, suspense, Agatha Christie, Dan Brown, Gillian Flynn, Lee Child, Louise Penny, John Grisham, Stephen King, James Patterson. So my challenge was, all right, can I copy what they do and then apply it to Sherlock Holmes? And the clear answer, of course, to that was slide 12. No, I couldn't. That would be dreaming. There's no way that I could actually imitate and successfully copy the success that they've achieved. One, because the odds of securing a contract with a major publishing house now are about 1 in 10,000. You hear about people like J.K. Rowling that were rejected 14 times, but there's 999,000 people that are still J.K. Rowlings that have never been accepted. And most authors will never get a major publishing contract. I was already 65 years old when I started into this. I was too old to wait a decade to maybe get published and probably wouldn't. My ego was too fragile to handle a lot of rejection. And frankly, I'm not that good a writer, and the stories are not that good. So my answer was to self-publish. And let's move on to slide 13. And I needed to learn a lot about writing and self-publishing. This slide and the next one are all, you can get copies, they're all active links to series of YouTube channels all about writing mysteries, and about self-publishing. And I've listened to, worked my way through hundreds of these. I put them on while I'm making dinner, and I'll try to learn from them. I'll make notes, and I've just kept working my way through them. So page 14 is more of them. And I have all these on my YouTube subscribe list, and I have kept watching them and tried to learn from them. And it wasn't enough just to watch the videos. I also read a lot of books. So slide 15. These books are, this is a screenshots from my Kindle list, and I've actually read parts of most of these books, and move on to slide 16. There's more books, and then the bottom corner are the books that are on my shelves. There's about 320 books on my iPad, another 60 on my shelf. And then I took courses, and they're available on BBC Maestro, a masterclass at Wondrium, formerly the Great Courses. And there are some fabulously good teachers in these courses. You got Ken Follett, Lee Child, Harlan Coben, James Patterson, Margaret Atwood, Dan Brown, Joyce Carol, Salman Rushdie, Amy Tan, David Baldacci, and more all teach courses on writing and writing mysteries. And I've listened to them all and tried to remember what they were teaching me. So move on to slide 17, please. And I also had to learn how to format and books for Amazon, and how to find good covers for them. Now, partway through my program, I took a course on book marketing, and the fellow who was one of the mentors looked at all my covers and said, "Craig, you need more heat." And he mentioned that if you put a beautiful woman on a cover with a bit of a sexual subtext or something like that, the main purchasers of that will be women. Women are attracted to books that have beautiful women on the covers. And 70% of all books sold today are sold to women. 80% of all fiction is sold today to women. In one of the courses that James Patterson was teaching, he said, "Now let's talk about my readers, she." And then he went on and pointed out that 70% of the people that read his books are women. And what we learned about men is that most men have not read a single book of fiction since they left college. And according to the marketers, men today who are between ages of 25 and 60 are buying books. If they do buy books at all, they buy them to get paid, to get laid, or to lose weight. So you recognize that your covers and your stories and so on are primarily being sold to women readers. And so the covers, which are in the top left-hand corner, you can see that they got darker, they got a little bit sexier, and I noticed that Ray just held up a copy of his The Adventures of Matahari's Harem, which actually has a picture of Matahari on the front of it. So that's what I had to learn to do as far as formatting and covers, and then move on to slide 18, please. The changes that I made. My books got longer, the plots got more involved. The scribbling you can see in the top right is how I outline a novel. It's a parabola opening upwards. And that is the great standard archetypical form of the comedy. I learned that from Northrop Frye. Thought he knew a lot more about it than I did, so I just copied him. Comedy starts with a period of integration. It descends into isolation. It comes back to a period of integration. And most of today's novels follow some sort of arc, both in the story, it descends and then comes back up again, and in the characters. So the plots became more involved. There were more subplots I put in, more distinct characters and voices, more red herrings. Most of my books I linked to historical events. One of the things that I learned from Dan Brown, as he said, people read his books because they want to learn things. And so I tied in as many historical events as I could. Just working from where I started with the first book, Studying Scarlet, that was tied to the death of Queen Victoria and the ascension of Edward VII. Next was tied to the Tooth of the Buddha. Another was tied to the connection of the Western Union Telegraph to England. Another was tied to the national rugby team going to New Zealand. Tammany Hall, the Ku Klux Klan, the Dreyfus Affair, the Dreadnoughts, the Siege of Khartoum, the Russo-Japanese War, James Whittaker Wright, the Bakerloo subway line, the Titanic, Franco-Prussian War, the Jewish pogroms in the Vale of Settlement, the Olympics, and the anarchist bombings of Greenwich. That was just the first 15 or 20 books, and I kept tying it to those. And that was part of the fun of writing them, because the real fun of doing these was researching and learning. The stories took an arc. They did descend, but I also sent Holmes through a bit of an arc. I was a little bit harder on him than Doyle was. So a number of the stories have Holmes making mistakes. It sent him into a pretty dark place. And just for the fun of it, because there's still enough time, I'm going to read the opening of one of the short stories, because it's fairly typical of more modern, current detective mystery thriller stories, is that the crime appears very early on in the story. There's not a 4 or 5 page or 2 or 3 chapter introduction. So this was the story I wrote, and it opens like this. He was not much more than a child. I estimated his age at 14. He was a handsome boy with raven black hair and deeply tanned skin color that marked the person who came from the lands under the Raj. His young body was beginning to show signs of an emerging, well-made sportsman. From his place, lying on his back in the pavement, his dark brown eyes stared up at the morning sky, lifeless. Behind his head was a pool of blood, now darkened and congealed. Was he one of yours, Holmes? Demanded Inspector Lestrade. One of yours, what you call them, irresponsibles? Yes, Inspector. He was one of my regulars. What was his name? The other lads called him Sahib. He had no other name. What in heavens did you have him doing that ended up with him getting shot in the head? He was engaged in surveillance, said Holmes. Of what? Related to the recent robbery in Hatton Garden. Hatton Garden. We have not called you in to help on that. Who did? The shop owner? No. Then who? No one. Lestrade paused his questions and glared at Holmes. All right, that was one of my openings. And you see the crime begins early, and Holmes has apparently made an error by sending out his irregulars, and one of them got shot, and then Holmes descends into a very deep, dark place before, of course, resolving the thing and finding out that that wasn't what happened at all. I use a lot of different locations for stories. I was very, very lucky in my career to have traveled to over 100 countries. I stopped counting when I got to 100. It meant that I went to not just the most miserable slums, refugee camps, zones of conflict, remote villages. I also had a chance to go to most of the great cities of the world, to visit most of the great art museums. And I was also very lucky to have traveled all through the British Isles. And most of the places where I sent Holmes, I've had the chance to go to. So that's been really great. So you can see the list of the places that I went, sent Holmes in England. Also sent in Europe to France, Switzerland, Vienna, Rome, Gibraltar, Spain, Belgium, Athens, Berlin. And the stories or the backstories go back as far as New Zealand, Ceylon, Japan, USA, Canada, Argentina, Netherlands, Egypt. I used a lot. Now, part of that was just because I didn't want to get too bored. And it was very interesting for me to send him there and to do the research. And then slide 19, there's a difference in the role of women. The females I'd created have a lot more agency. They are business shop owners, they're bankers, athletes, scientists. They've had military training. They're independent, their husbands. They're not needing to be rescued, but we have to be careful that we're not creating 21st century female characters. They are still 19th, early 20th century women, but they certainly are very assertive and clever, and for me, far more interesting to write. There's a subtext of sexuality and a few veiled hints of gender preferences. A couple of characters that are gay, but they're not actually overtly, it doesn't come right out and say they're gay. There is some genre bending, and that's placed, as I've already mentioned, the crimes usually take place early. They take place on the first page, not the 8th or 10th page. Holmes partially solves crime and then has to move to stop a far larger disaster, which is to say, I've mashed together the mystery and then added a thriller ending. There's usually some sort of ticking clock at the end of the stories. And I delved into a whole variety of subgenres. One of the stories was a locked room mystery, another did the hero's journey, another the femme fatale. There were serial murders, there were spy stories, there were religious conflicts, military, financial, family terrorists, international trade, art theft, literary, art music, historical wrongs. Part of that was just my own desire to keep learning and keep experimenting and keep trying to do different things. And then I had to learn to sell Sherlock Holmes fan fiction. Now, like it or not, Amazon is controlling the book market, and it absolutely controls the ebook market. And that means you have to learn to work with Amazon. They are a huge monster, but they're very, very user-friendly. And if you're going to be a self-published author, it means you have to publish on Amazon. Some authors will publish on other providers as well, but Amazon will still be the bulk of anything you do. And the market has changed in the 10 years since I've been self-publishing. When it first came out, it was print on demand, and you were selling paperback. So then they brought out Kindle and Kindle Direct Publishing, and within a couple of years, my market had moved to half print books and half ebooks. And then Amazon brought out Kindle Unlimited so that you could then get paid. If people subscribe to Kindle Unlimited for $10 a month, the author got paid half a cent a page for every page that somebody read. And that has now taken over the market for self-published authors. Probably at this point, about 50% of my income comes from Kindle Unlimited, about 40% from ebooks, and only about 10% from paperbacks. the model, if you want to be a successful self-published author, and I've had moderate success, I'm certainly far from being at the top of the list. I'm probably in the top 10% of self-published authors, but that means there's still 100,000 people out there that are doing much better than I am. But the model is to produce a lead magnet. This is a smaller piece that you make available for free in exchange for getting somebody's name and email address. You then send them newsletters on a regular basis. They need to be personalized. They need to tell them about what you're doing. They need to hear more about what's happening in the world of Sherlock, and you can promote other authors. The volume is necessary. You cannot be a self-published author and have any sort of success if you're just writing a book a year. You need to be writing about a 50,000 word book and try to get one out at least every 2 months or faster. And most successful people who are self-publishing are publishing at that rate. You post regularly on Facebook and you pay for paid advertising. And if you're getting a return on it, you just keep spending more. And the result, over the last 9 years, I cranked out 60 short novels, 20 short stories, and sold about 250,000 books, and 16 million pages have been read. I'm incredibly grateful for the whole 12, as I put in all my acknowledgments to Arthur Conan Doyle for giving me the characters, to you who are the very esteemed group of Sherlockians who have helped me, encouraged me, and to my readers. It's been a fabulous adventure, and I'm going to stop there and be very happy to answer any questions.
All right, let's give a virtual round of applause to Mr. Copland, to Craig there. And so for the question and answer, if you just want to use the raise hand feature, or if I see you, you can just raise your hand as well. I see David is David's already got is already up there. So David.
Good morning, David.
Hi, Craig. How are you?
Doing great.
Good. I want to say, as you know, as I've told you, I'm a big fan. I have all of your books. I'm a physical book collector. I started when you put out your first book, which was A Study with Scarlet, way back when, which, as you mentioned, was like a crossover with Scarlett O'Hara and Rhett Butler several years on after the action of Gone with the Wind. At the time, you had announced that you were going to do 60 books matching the 60 canonical stories. And I admit I was skeptical because I've heard other people have plans like that that didn't quite come through. So I was really thrilled when this year that you got all the way to the end of that plan. So I applaud you for that. I was just wondering if you could comment a little bit about the story of A Study with Scarlet, because I know the first version that you put, which I bought, you had to withdraw and rewrite because you, I guess, tangled a little bit with the Gone with the Wind Margaret Mitchell estate. And how long did the first one live before you had to kill it and rewrite it as the second version?
About three months. The first tangle, though, actually came from the cover, because the good folks at MGM and Turner Movies or whatever sent a note to Amazon and said I was pirating it. And I said, hold on, it's a parody. There are all sorts of parodies of that cover, including Kermit the Frog with Miss Piggy holding Miss Piggy and everything like that. But they said no. So I just changed the cover. And then I read up a little bit on the fact that the folks who held the rights to Gone with the Wind were somewhat litigious. They did not actually reprimand me. I just decided to make the exercise caution, change the names slightly, told the readers that this person, Starlet, will remind you of Scarlet, but really can't be her because of copyright. But those are the people they would have in their mind anyway. So that is what happened. And yes, and I learned not to endanger my writing by, I certainly could not take on MGM.
Yeah, I have both versions, and I'm glad that my sister is about as big a Gone with the Wind fan as I am a Sherlock Holmes fan, and I bought her that original first version too as a Christmas present. So there are two of them out there in the world that we're glad to have. So thank you.
Well, and thank you, because you did send me a note that was very encouraging, and you've encouraged me and so many others along the way. So, David, on behalf of all of us that are writing pastiches, you've done a fabulous job. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, other questions before? I've got plenty, so if anybody else wants to jump in though. All right, Larry. Oh, and then Margie. How's that? Or how about Margie first, then Larry, because Larry's muted.
Okay, my only question was, if you hit the magic number of 60, what's next?
Okay, I will continue to write occasional short stories for David and Derek for their compendiums that they issue regularly. But I've started plotting out the next series. They'll be historical mysteries. They'll be set in New York City between the wars. There'll be a female sleuth, and I'm pulling in one of the characters, a young woman that was a bit of a protege of Sherlock Holmes. The Watson character will be a veteran of World War I, and I'm laid out 21 books starting in the year 1920, and then a different adventure, and they'll be tied to historical events that took place between the bombing of Wall Street, which you can read up on, which took place in September 1920, up until the entry of the U.S. into World War II. So that's in the works, but I will not be writing any more Sherlock novels.
All right, Larry. Oh, I think Larry walked away.
I'm back.
he's
I'm back. I'm fine. I'm fine. Just went to get a pencil because I want
Okay,
to write down his answers. Maybe. I was going to ask Craig if what particularly, I've read a couple of your Sherlock Holmes mashups, and I thought they were interesting, but not really. I was when I went into it, I started looking. I was expecting a traditional Sherlock Holmes story, and so it kind of surprised me. And I wonder if these 60 stories that you've written that are each inspired by a canonical story, are they like in a format we can? What kind of format can we purchase those in? What books should we look for? I mean, you've got all those books, so I assume that some of them have collected these short stories. So I want to specifically read the short stories that you've written that are inspired by canonical stories, because that intrigues me. How would I look for that?
Well, I do have a website. It's www.sherlockholmesmystery.com. I was lucky enough to be able to get that URL. So if you open that up, anybody can open it up, and you can see all the ones I've written. And okay, there's also all the collection books. I did 60 as individual books, as paperbacks, as ebooks, and then I also redid them all in large print for visually impaired people. And then I did put them all into collection box sets that have 4 or 5, and all the short stories are in there as well. They're farther down on the page of the website. So you can, that's the place to start. And then there are short blurbs on each of them. If you click on any individual title, you'll see the blurb about that. And the stories themselves vary. Some of them are direct sequels. Some of them are mashups. Some of them I just sort of riffed on the title or some trope that was in the book and borrowed it and wrote a new story. So they're kind of all over the map. And as I said before, that's just so I wouldn't get bored.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
all right, Brian.
Yes. Craig, I know this is you're not supposed to ask an author this, but which one's your favorite out of all these books you've written?
Well, your first comment is correct. And there are a couple that were my favorite. The Mata Hari, I put the preface to that because as a 14-year-old boy going to Bible camp in the summer, in the senior section, every cabin was asked to come up with a name for their cabin. My cabin came up with something totally unimaginative, like, lumberjacks. This was before Monty Python did his number on the lumberjacks, but another cabin called themselves Mata Hari's Harem. And obviously the counselors and staff did not understand the meaning of Mata Hari's Harem. But the name stuck with me. And 50 years later, I put it in as the title of a book. So that was fun to do. And probably, if I say the one that I enjoyed most was, I guess, the first, the Gone with the Wind mashup, just because it was the first creative effort at trying to write a Sherlock Holmes story. And otherwise, the favorite one is usually the one that I've written last, because that's the one I can remember what I wrote. And when I go back and read numbers 1, 2, and 3, I think, gee, this is an interesting story. I wonder what happens next, because I've forgotten.
I'm going to jump in, and then I see Tom's got a question as well. Let me just scroll, make sure I'm not missing anybody. I have a couple questions just from the business side of things. And one thing I'm curious about is that you've said about the thrillers and the novel length stories being bestsellers, but we've, at least at our publishing house, we're finding actually that our short story collections, our traditional ones, are our best sellers. And I thought, and correct me if I'm wrong, when I looked, last time I looked on Amazon for you, which was this week, it said that the Sherlock Holmes Never Dies is your best-selling book, which is your kind of like your Leaves of Grass, your story collection that keeps growing. And I was just curious to know, is that correct? Is that your bestseller? Was it that day on Amazon? And if so, like, why not do more of the short story format?
Okay, the Sherlock Holmes Never Dies, there's 16 books with that title, and they're all the box sets. And by far the best selling was I put 40 of my books into one compendium, and I did it. You can't buy it in paperback. It's really for people that belong to Kindle Unlimited, and I get page reads for it. So that was why I did it that way. Those are actually full books in the bestseller. Now, the short story one that is the one that I give away, and that has 6 short stories. That is my lead magnet. So that's why it's up at the top, because it's free or it's 99 cents. But no, the bulk of what I have sold are either the large collection pieces that people read online or the individual titles.
Yeah, I have at least one of your short story collection. I thought that was called Never Dies, but maybe I got to go back to my bookshelf to check.
Yeah, well, they're all called Never Dies.
Okay.
Sherlock Holmes Never Dies. All the box sets are Sherlock Holmes Never Dies, collection 1 up to now collection 19.
Okay, gotcha. All right, Tom. You're muted, Tom. Oh, Tom, you're still muted. Let's see if I don't think I can unmute on my end.
Tom Burns, you're muted.
Oh, he got it. Oh, we're still not hearing you. You're not coming across as muted though, Tom.
Huh.
I'm not sure. Tom, for some reason, we're not hearing you. I don't know why, because you're not muted anymore.
Now,
go.
can
There
you
you
hear
go.
me?
Yes, yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm a better computer person than I thought. I don't have an unmute button on my screen currently. So
Well, you're fine
I,
now. Fine now.
I had to go into settings to get the mic. Anyway, I wanted to ask Craig to talk a little bit more about his covers. Do you do them? Do you hire them out? What's that process? I do my own covers for my books. And I guess you could expect that they're, what they should be with somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience with covers. So talk a little bit more about yours.
Okay, I found a cover designer, fabulous lady who's in Winnipeg. And she did the bulk of the first 40 or 50. Then I taught myself a little bit about, I would send her images and tell her what I wanted. I would buy images off of Shutterstock or iStock Photos or whatever, would send her a bunch of images and say, this is sort of what I'm thinking. She sent it back. We went back and forth. I said, okay, we're going to go with this. Then as the coverage got a little more blatant, I started sending her other images, and then I learned to do covers myself using Canva and Microsoft Paint, or at least Windows Paint. And so some of them I've done myself. A few are mine, and the others I've hired out professionally. But I've never paid a fortune for a cover. You can pay up to $1,000 for a cover. I usually pay about 50. And they really probably need to be updated because some of them don't have a lot of sizzle to them. So I've been going back regularly and adding a little more heat to them.
David has a follow-up question for you, Craig, just asking if you have any plans to collect all the loose anthology stories into physical books.
The shorter collection books are all available as physical books. So like they're fairly thick copies. And hang on half a second, because I just pulled this back off my shelf. This was collection 15 that has 4 or 5 stories in it, and they're fairly long ones. So most of the collection, the box sets are available as physical books. The super collections are far too big for physical books. It's 3,000 pages, 4,000, 2,000, 3,000 pages, which is way too much for a physical book. And I did them only really for people that read online and that belong to Kindle Unlimited. And then I got paid by page reads. So yes, all the collection books, with the exception of the super collections, are all available as print copies as well.
I just have one last question for you. I was curious, so you do everything through Amazon. Have you ever done anything through like crowdfunding? Things like Kickstarter.
No. I investigated a lot of those things. And when I first started, I worked also with Smashwords, and that got my books printed through Barnes and Noble and iBooks and the others, Ingram Spark. And then I realized that I'm getting about 90% of my sales through Amazon anyway. And Amazon then put in the page reads, the Kindle Unlimited, but you had to be exclusive with Amazon with that. So when I uploaded all of my books through there, went exclusive with Amazon, my sales doubled. So I know that other people are great believers in Ingram Spark and doing crowdsourcing and so on. But I simply decided to stick with being exclusive with Amazon because it works and I've learned how to do it.
All right. And on that note, let's give another virtual round of applause for Craig Copland. Definitely check out his books, often through the Kindle Unlimited program, or just sometimes he does a lot of, I know you do a lot of Amazon free days for your ebooks as well. And there's very easy ways to get the books. And if you prefer physical copies, like I know a lot of us do, there's plenty of those available as well. I'm just going to share my screen for one last time. For the December meeting, we're going to have a little bit of a difference, just so you know that for the December meeting, we're actually going to join the crew of the Bark Lone Star. I was asked by Cindy Brown to give a talk on Sherlock Holmes and martial arts for their December meeting. And their meeting is held over Zoom. It's a slightly different day and time, though. It's Sunday, December 3rd at 2 p.m. Eastern time. And I believe by then it will also be 7 p.m. London time because we change our clocks tomorrow. So instead of having 2 virtual meetings in a row, I thought it would be best for us to combine. And Cindy said that all of 5 miles is welcome to join the crew of the Bark Lone Star. And so I will send out the link for that. And we'll see you in December for that. So, all right, for all of you Americans, have a happy Thanksgiving. Thank you all for coming, and I will be in touch again soon. And again, Craig, thank you so much for joining us.
Honored to be with you. Thank you.
Thank you.